Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, and happy Road Safety Week. I hope that everybody is having a good week and that you are ready to participate in this Wednesday webinar, where today, in light of the UN Global Road Safety Week, we will discuss how soft mobility is at the heart of safety. We had quite a number of signups, so we will give everybody a couple of minutes to be able to join. And then I will hand over to my colleague Cyril, who will use a case around soft mobility to really share ideas to spark the discussion. So we will give it a couple of minutes. In the meantime, if you can let us know if you can hear us, please use the chat for that. Feel free to introduce yourself. We see that Desalen is already doing that. Say who you are, where you're from, and maybe also what made you join the webinar today. Because we also always like to hear that. Cyril will present for around, I think, 20 minutes, and then we will have more or less 10 minutes for a questions and answer. And you can post your questions either in the chat or use the Q&A button that you will find on the top of the screen next to the chat. I'm going to hand over. I'm going to close my camera. I'm going to close my mic, and I will be back at the end of the webinar. Over to you, Cyril.
Thank you very much, Rose, for the intro. Welcome, colleagues. As mentioned by Rose, today we're going to look into what is the incidence of safety management practice as of today in our organization on the adoption of alternative transport mode. Namely, to do that, we're going to be using part of the case of a case study that we ran with the support of two organizations, Concern and Wave, e-bike provider in Beirut, Lebanon. We ran this business case last year. I have already copy-pasted the link of the knowledge platform of the Fleet Forum where you can find the full case, because we will not run through all the information here. But basically, with this case, we have placed an electric bike in the fleet of Concern Worldwide in Beirut, and you will see that the findings are quite interesting in terms of potential to reduce emission, but also cost, because one of the findings is that more or less like 8% of the 8% of the mileage covered by the car in the city has been covered by a bike with one single person, namely like the country director that was commuting to meetings. Of course, the safety in our work of operation in our sector, safety as in the condition of being protected from a danger, a risk, or an injury, and this embeds like both the physical safety but also the psychological safety. Safety is very legitimate area of concern in our organization, in our sector. It's also, we have witnessed a topic that instinctively comes up when we talk about new mobility solutions like active mobility, we'll talk about this, but also carpooling or public transport. So we identified it was important to look a bit more in depth into this matter. Short definition, what we call active mobility or sometimes soft mobility. In this webinar, we will not make a specific distinction between both, but it's basically all regular physical activity undertaken as a means of transport. Of course, it includes walking, cycling, the use of other type of device like a scooter, for example, and it has several benefits. Let's take a bit of a step back of why we are talking about active mobility or soft mobility. You might be already aware, as you are following regularly the production of the Fleet Forum, that to transition transport and mobility, we have a big problem. The big problem that we need to tackle is the very car-centric system in which we evolve. Most of the emission and the environmental impact of transport on the planet is linked to individual cars, as you can see on the visual. Individual cars and in like cars, but also motorcycles, the buses, the taxi, and of course a part of what is linked to road freight. So Important to have that in mind. We need to take action on the land mobility and the mechanism system that we are implementing today. The impact are of several categories. Of course, environmental, but also economical and social. They are very intertwined. You are very much aware of the emission impact of operating the cars and the vehicles within our fleet. Of course, their operation involves some waste and their production, but also the end of life. Operating on an infrastructure, road infrastructure, but also networks of gas stations has an impact. Resource scarcity is definitely key because we are extracting maybe raw materials, but also petrol, no oil, that are not like infinite on the planet, hence the link to the economical angle. But there is also a series of social impact of the current car-centric model, an impact on public health, of course, road safety. Once again, happy Road Safety Week. And topic like access, inequality to transport mode. I'm going to focus for a minute on two key elements here, also to make really the connection between the impact of the car-centric model and the concept of safety. We really have, let's say, a double burden when we talk about the car-centric model. Of course, we have the impact in terms of emission of the vehicle. Just one important note, we talk a lot about CO2, so tailpipe emissions of the vehicle. CO2 or CO2 equivalent, meaning greenhouse gas emission, do have an impact on climate. However, operating a car or a fleet of car has also other consequences that are not only linked to the climate and environment, namely they are linked to pollution. Particulate matters, they are also emitted by the tailpipe emission of the vehicle, but not only, actually it's less than 50% of the particulate matter, so the pollution that is emitted by tailpipe. We have like now more than 50% of the particulate matter that is emitted by the abrasion of tires on the road surface, so the road wear, but also the abrasion of the brakes and the clutch. Also, another incidence of the particulate matter is that they are induced by the resuspension, by the circulation of the traffic of the cars on the road, but the resuspend those particulate matters. Particulate matters, they are emitted mainly by a motorized vehicle, but also the industry and the fires. Fires may be your barbecue, a wildfire, or other source of fires. They have quite an impact, and pollution has quite an impact on public health, and you will see the link now. It increases the risk of lung, heart disease, and strokes and cancer. Pollution is quite a killer on the planet. As of today, the day we speak, we have 9 million deaths per year registered as per WHO, and more or less 6.5 million deaths attributed to air pollution. So in short, human activity, they produce more and more consequences, and this is on the human themselves. Linked to the topic of public health, the current car-centric model is having an impact because we are more and more sedentary. We move less and less, and you can see here as highlighted that we estimate as per WHO reference that 1 in 4 adults and 4 in 5 adolescents are not sufficiently active. Also, as an illustration, obesity today is killing more or less 5 million persons per year. So really important to have in mind this double burden, and I'm putting highlight that a car operation is not only an impact on the global warming, but also directly on the public health through the pollution that is basically the particulate matter PM10 and PM2.5. Which is great is that our triptych of reference to manage this transition towards a more sustainable transport and mobility, avoid, shift, improve, is taking into consideration those several elements. And as you can see, the topic of pollution ends by accelerating walking, cycling, or decreasing the number of vehicles that we operate is taken into account into the most important pillar, the most impactful pillar, avoid, shift, improve typology. It's even estimated that those pillars that tend to be not focusing on the avoid and shift, but instead on the improve, are namely the most impactful pillar. Very important to highlight that. So this topic of safety is in a way taken into account into our in our frame. I'm gonna stop for a couple of minutes on the business case that I have shared the link. You can access it if you're a member of the Fleet Forum. So we have run before placing the bike in the fleet of concern. We have run a study to the colleagues of concern that were operating in Beirut, the main city of Lebanon, and interesting to see that colleagues have been all very aware about the benefits of walking and cycling in the city, and they was also very open to consider engaging into soft mobility in the framework of work. The survey are also allowed to highlight that they were open to even use electric bikes, including all the necessary safety equipment in order to run their errands or potentially going to the meeting. And as a barriers to engage into using electric bike, they have rightfully identified the risk of safety, their concern regarding the weather, concern regarding infrastructure that can be very linked to the topic of safety, and also some gender considerations. So, are the safety concerns that highlighted by our colleagues relevant? Of course, yes, because one of the basics of safety management and security management is that we need to take into account the feeling, the impression, the perception of the colleagues, of the individual. That's key. So all what has been highlighted by colleagues in this survey are always important to take into account. But it's also good, like as we have a lot of objective and subjective insecurity, to take a bit of a step back and look at what is the road safety status. Important to highlight, as per WHO report of the global status on road safety from 2023, that well, the main killer on the road remain the cars, the four-wheelers. It's highlighted. 51% of the death in road traffic are linked and involving the four-wheelers and as well as the two or three-wheelers. Then we have a percentage of casualties that is linked to user of bicycle, and 23% to pedestrian. So important to highlight that the car remained the first killer, if I may say, or the motorized vehicle are the first killer. One thing of identification as well is that the cyclist or the pedestrian, when they are involved in an accident that causes death, those deaths are mainly caused by a motorized vehicle. Of course, the more riders or commuters, walking commuters we have in the country, and the more walking commuters or bicycle-related accidents we have. That makes sense, and that's why also we have a car system that is so centered around the car, the vehicles, the motorized vehicle, that the main number of casualties is linked to them. So more vehicles, more bicycle on the road means, of course, more potential bicycle-related accident. But does that mean that we should avoid promoting active mobility or walking and cycling? That's a question that I'll let you chew in for a quarter second, because I'm moving now to the next slide, where I invite you to take a step further back from the sole like transport injury, transport casualties that we have just looked into. Here, we have a visual or what are the major threats to life expectancy on the planet. It's quite clear, and there is like a growing share of literature that is available into that the air pollution on the big picture on the planet is becoming and is already the biggest killer of human population. That doesn't mean, of course, that we should disregard and lay low on the issues of transport injuries and road safety. Of course not. But it's good to have a big picture, understanding that the pollution generated, I remind you, from the motorized system, the motorized vehicle, from the industry, but also the fires, are the main source of reduction of life expectancy on the planet. If we look at it to another angle and we look a bit how this pollution kills, we could say that pollution in comparison with road injuries is a slow killer. Road injury, I don't need to make the demonstration, is quite straightforward, although we have also the topic of injuries that can be a longer term impact. But pollution is not necessarily something on which we have an immediate impact or a visual impact on our day-to-day life. You can see here that we have in these two tables, we have from one side the leading cause of the reduction of years of healthy life in 2022, and I have captured with these little cars the share of this leading cause that is attributable to motorized road transport. So we can see that in 22 we have some heart disease, strokes, COPD, which is a lung disease, and also of course road injuries. What we see in the projection to 2050, if we don't do anything about the current vehicle system, is that basically like the slow killers, so linked to pollution, are taking a bigger part into the burden of disease in the planet. Once again, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't disregard the topic of road injuries and road safety, but it's a way of highlighting that the topic of pollution is going to become more and more, if not already, as highlighted in the previous slide, an area of concern for our safety. So let's quickly summarize those few information that I've shared. In brief, we have a car systems that generates some direct, immediate safety issue that are more captured into the topic of road safety, car accident, car crashes. But it also generates some indirect, longer safety issues that are formalized under the emission of particulate matter and the pollution. And as just highlighted in those two previous slides, the indirect impact is considered as a bigger threat to the reduction of life expectancy as of today. And it's planned to continue growing in crazy ways if we don't do anything about reducing the number of vehicles and modifying our current model from a car-centric to a sustainable mobility. The benefit of active mobility is that they are allowing to reduce the indirect longer-term safety issues, like pollution, of course, because instead of taking a car in urban environment, we will walk or cycle or do a mix of walk, cycle, and potentially use public transport. There are also the benefit demonstrative of increasing the well-being of individual. And finally, of course, they also involve immediate safety issue linked to road safety. Because if you ride, if you walk, as we have seen in the data from the WHO, you can be involved into an accident. Of course, for the case of cycling, for example, there is some involvement linked to having a lack of skill or practice of cycling. You are exposed to weather, to sun or to harsh weather conditions. And of course, you have a degree of exposure to air pollution. which is, by the way, pretty much the same as the level of exposure to air pollution as a driver or someone within the cockpit of a car. So out of that, basically, I want to present you a dilemma that we need to face. We need to make trade-off, not only as individual, but I would mainly favor that we do that as a group and collectively. So basically, we have two options, like, do we want to continue promoting our current status, our business as usual, like promoting the car-centric system, if I may say, where we are privileging an immediate safety over a collective safety. I'm saying that as in today, do we prefer to be running into a bigger car within the city in the case that we are involved into an accident and we're going to be safer than potentially someone walking, someone cycling, or someone using a smaller car? Do we want to continue being on the good side of the bumper, if I may say, like if we are using a car, like we are going to be always safer than cyclists or than a pedestrian? So do we want to prefer that and really limiting our vision of safety management to road injuries? Or in the contrary, do we want to start engaging into active mobility, take benefit of its benefit to the reduction of emission, but also to public health, but of course, starting to accept and face the risks that engaging into active mobility involve. So really, the dilemma is that do we want to continue as we are and have an immediate result, or do we want to start embracing new ways of moving, integrating them into our sense of operation, accepting, facing, and managing the risks it implies, but in the end, to contribute positively to a brighter midterm future, at least in urban environment, by definitely reducing the pollution, increasing the physical activity. As of today, it's quite clear that within our organization, there is quite a disregard that is done on in the safety management framework. There is quite a disregard that is done on the longer term environment and health related hazards. As you may know, and I'm sure you have been already involved in those kind of exercise to identify the risk, and now we manage a threat in our organization. We identify a threat. We multiply it by the probability these threats actually happen, and we multiply it by the impact it would generate on us, on our operation, and we diminish it from the mitigation measures we have actually identified, and that's what we call our residual risk. So in most of the cases, our framework of thoughts, most of the cases, again, I speak under your control because I don't have data to support that, but feel free like to challenge me. We consider in those framework of security, safety management, most of the time, very immediate threats or hazards or risk, like car accident, for example. More rarely, we are considering the more protracted threats, like the example that I have given you, like on air pollution. And in many cases, in the current framework, in many organizations, we are seeing that active mobility and sometimes even public transport are kind of a priori forbidden or banned, or they're not really considered. So of course, once again, active mobility, road safety risks exist. We can be involved into an accident. You might want to step in a bike, but with a lack of skill and not practice, or not being briefed, or not being trained. You are exposed to weather condition, or sometimes harsh weather condition, and you can be exposed to air pollution. But the bottom line here is that we need to make evolve our current practices of risk management and make sure that the potential risk of this active mobility are actually managed and not avoided a priori, because they have many benefits not only for our commitment to reduce environmental emission, but also for the well-being of our staff. Once again, active mobility has a positive impact on public health. And I am engaging in the two last slides here that I've prepared for you on behalf of the team of the Fleet Forum. A series of recommendations. First recommendation, well, take action. Start, engage, test, lead, demonstrate leadership, like your organization, our sector need to actively start to engage into promoting active mobility. We have still too many cases, and I'm sure you can witness and testify about many of them, that we are using a heavy-duty four-wheel drive to go to a meeting that is a few hundred meters or less than a kilometer away from our offices. We need to engage into shifting those kind of journey to active mobility, soft mobility. Depending your role in an organization, you need to create a space conducive to change for that. Of course, engage into action, but promote the solution and allow colleagues to start experimenting such solution. We need to discourage the use of motorized mobility for short journeys, for sure. And we can consider, so in the case that interests us today, we're talking about bikes, but of course we could be like purchasing, renting them to the staff that is interested, and that's actually how Concern has allowed to build this business case. In terms of change management, of course, it's very important to have a participative approach. We need to engage with our colleagues. We might actually find allies into engaging, as you have seen in the small survey that I have highlighted you, like colleagues acknowledge quite their interest and their openness to engage into active mobility. It's important to inform, to sensitize, to communicate. You can run a staff survey that allows you to identify potentially like the barriers or the opportunities of engaging in such a type of alternative transport mode, but also having an understanding of what are the staff worries and what are their maybe upskilling needs. Important, I have mentioned before the concept of well-being, like we talk a lot in our organization about well-being. Once again, active mobility, the literature here is factual, has a positive impact on the well-being, activity, physical activity, has a positive impact, so you can engage into those concepts, liaise with the colleagues that are in charge of those topics, maybe HR department, and build your case. You can also engage into evaluating, the potential, usual destination that you have in your area of work to promote, the active mobility on those specific roads or destination. And of course, for those of you that want to make a big step, you can also try to start modify the transport allowance policy of colleagues and of staff to promote the less emissive modes, and even modify your current guidance manuals to include that option that needs to be taken into account. More linked to safety management. First element, we need to be collective. We need to involve our security focal point. We need to promote with them the fact that they need to allow you to make happen such a trial or test of active mobility, and instead of being a gatekeeper, as I mentioned, in many of our current framework, we disregard or discard by default or a priori the topic of active mobility and public transport. This needs to change, and that requires an engagement, an advocacy to our safety colleagues, and also making sure that they have the space, to bring their arguments and contribute to assessment. So that really need to happen. On the more practical side, of for example, placing the bike in the fleet, it's important that the organization that promotes active mobility provide all the necessary equipment to users. That can be helmets, that can be masks, provide the bikes and ensure its maintenance itself. provide some reassuring verification that the one of the staff insurance is covering actually this kind of potential casualty. Once again, communicate, brief, provide recommendation to colleague, accompany them on a ride if it's a bike, but also by walk if it's the first time, but the colleague is doing a journey from a point A to point B in a city that he doesn't know or she doesn't know. And you can also like suggest some preferred itinerary, as in, you know, the most cyclable streets or itinerary or the more walkable ones. So this is it. I want to thank you. And once again, I really want to insist on the dilemma that we have to face. Not in every place we will have a one-size-fits-all solution. It requires local colleagues' involvement to make those trade-offs. But overall, very important that we engage into action and we invite colleagues to start to engage, to test. Thank you very much for your attention. And I'm going to look into the potential question.
Gotta step in, Cyril, because
Yes.
half an
No,
hour is gone.
Oh, sorry.
Yes. Half an hour is gone. So we don't have any time for questions and answers. There was an interesting discussion there was some discussion going on in the chat about, well, people are saying, oh, we should opt for option B, right, in the dilemma that you posed. But there's also some opinions around, okay, but we don't want to expose our own staff to pollution. And that is a bit of a catch-22, if you ask me, where we say, okay, well, as an international organization, let's keep our staff safe by continue to use vehicles and therefore pose more risks for others around us. So I think we have plenty of thoughts to do another webinar around this in a couple of months from now, or even weeks. I want to thank everyone. I want to thank Cyril. Next week, we do have another webinar hosted by ICRC, talking about KPIs for fleet waste management. So be sure to go to the Fleet Forum website, register, and I hope to see you all there again. For now, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Cyril. Enjoy the rest of your day and hope to see you soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.